What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Between the Lines Sports Podcast. We went on a hiatus, I think, maybe since end of football season, maybe early baseball season this past year. We are back. Football's pretty much back. We had our first dose of it this past weekend with some games, but we're getting the full swing of it this upcoming weekend, and then NFL will kick off this next week. Tell me, how you feeling about football season this year so far? Excited? Tennessee and
I'm
everything?
excited. I mean, it's definitely slowed down this last week or so. I feel like the days have taken longer, even though we had some games last weekend. But yeah, I'm ready for it.
What games are you looking forward to this weekend? I know there's some pretty big ones. Obviously, we play at 12, which should be a relatively easy win, but hopefully we get those first game hiccups out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch everything, but I'm definitely looking forward to the Virginia Tech Vandy game at noon just to see, how they do. Virginia Tech's supposed to have an improved team, and they're one of the teams everybody's talking about in the ACC, maybe being a sleeper to get to the championship game. They've got a really good quarterback, and Vandy, we thought 2 years ago maybe they had taken some steps because they were pretty good. They upset Florida and Kentucky there in November and looked like they were taking strides. And then last year they were awful. So interested just to see both those teams. It's an interesting matchup because they're playing at Vandy. So, don't know how either team's going to be first week, but that's one to watch for sure. Also, the Clemson Georgia game at noon. You got the Miami Florida game at 3:30. That's just really interesting because whoever loses that game is obviously in big trouble with their fan base. And then you got the big Texas A&M Notre Dame game at night. So there's a lot to look forward to, but those are just a few that jump out with SEC teams.
Yeah. Do you have a other than the first game of the year with Florida State and Georgia Tech? First, before I go into this part, what do you think about that? Do you think after watching that game, Georgia Tech's a little bit better than what people are giving them credit for, or do you think Florida State's not as good? And we always talk about at the beginning of the year these preseason rankings that they're just kind of guessing it for the most part. I mean, a lot of the top tier teams are going to be good. Like Georgia's going to be good, Alabama's going to be good, Clemson's going to be decent enough to be in the top 25. But other than that, I feel like sometimes they just throw them in there. But like Florida State, after the season they had last year, they lost a lot of key pieces with Travis and Coleman on offense, and I don't know. I was kind of surprised they had him at 10 just out the gate, and then they dropped one over in Ireland that could be crucial to their season as far as making the playoffs if they're even good enough to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised with the outcome. I mean, like you said, they lost a lot last year. I mean, defensive line, they lost Verse, they lost Finsky, and they had some of those guys back, but I mean, that's those two guys alone are enough to lose and be in trouble. And then on offense, Jordan Travis was unbelievable. And then we saw what they look like kind of with Brock Gwynn put into action last year against Florida. I mean, obviously he was a freshman last year, but he struggled big time. And then, so they go out and get Cam Ward and they lose him to the draft, and now they get DJ. And I think it just proves that DJ probably should have stayed put at Oregon State because he played so much better with less pressure. I mean, you can compare Oregon State's schedule to Florida State's, but I mean, really, if you look at it, I mean, Oregon State played Oregon last year. They played Washington last year. They were playing they played USC, so they're playing teams that were pretty solid, and he performed well. But it just seems like maybe under the microscope or with that pressure, he doesn't perform well. I don't know, or the offense doesn't suit him. But yeah, I think Georgia Tech's pretty solid. I mean, last year they made the bowl game, and they played Georgia really tough at the end of the year, and then hammered UCF in the bowl. So I think that they've got the right hire for them with the guy they got in Brent Key, and they've got a big offensive line. They're physical and they can really run the ball. And like I said, Florida State, maybe they just lost a little bit more than we thought because, I mean, Georgia Tech handled them. I mean, they only won by 3, but they moved the lines of scrimmage really on both sides and made it tough for Florida State to move the ball too. So I was not shocked with Georgia Tech winning, but it was kind of crazy that Florida State couldn't move the ball at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we watched most of it together, but like our buddy Matt was there as well, and he's a Florida State fan. Throughout the game and before the game, he's talking about how they were supposed to have, by opinion, the best defensive line in the country. And I mean, they got bullied the whole game. Anytime Georgia Tech wanted to run the ball between the tackles and get a couple yards, they did. I mean, there was no stopping them, and they didn't really make the adjustments I felt like they needed to either. They didn't load the box and kind of dare them to throw the ball, which And I think in the first half they were like 3 of 5 throwing the ball. And if he had made one more of those 5, I think it would have been a touchdown. It's where he overthrew that dude about the 5 yard line. But I mean, he had a decent sized gap between him and the guy behind him. He just overthrew him by a little bit. But I mean, when you throw the ball 5 times in college football, how do you not load the box and play man coverage and then just dare them to run? I don't understand why they didn't make that adjustment in that first half, or really even throughout the game. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they just might not feel good about their secondary or whatever, but yeah, you figured that they would change it up a little bit. But again, I mean they were getting handled by Georgia Tech's O-line, and that's the strength of their team. So like I said, we still don't know much. I mean, Florida State could obviously improve and have a really good year and figure it out and change the way they use DJ, but we'll just have to see. I mean, they have another game this week. Obviously, Boston College, a team you'd expect them to beat, but it's another conference game, so we'll see what they adjust and how they handle it.
Yeah, one thing they can typically do is run the ball too. So let's see if they make some adjustments on defense at least to stop the run game.
Yeah, I mean he really reminds me of Joe for UT at the beginning of the year last year. I mean, I think that he's like real hesitant to run the ball. Like they would call those design runs, and he's kind of stutter stepping rather than hitting the hole. And then as the year went on, Joe became like a much better runner because he like started to trust it and like realized that he could do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's not an accurate enough passer. Or, like he's got to embrace that and use his legs too. So we'll see how they adjust because obviously, just like with UT last year, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between UT transitioning from Hooker to Milton, as Florida State transitioning from Travis to Uyunglele, because they're just so similar. Like Travis and Hooker were just crazy with their legs and just could dot the ball. And the other two have huge arms, but, a little inconsistency. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of develop him and see how the season goes.
Yeah. Like speaking on Tennessee, as far as going from Hooker to Milton, now we're with Nico. It almost feels like we threw somebody in. Like if we had gone from Hooker to Nico, I'd have felt real good about it because we're not getting. I mean, we don't know for sure yet, but we're not getting the same type of player. Hendon has a special talent and ability to know like when the right time is to run. And I think Nico can definitely develop that too, but he can use his legs and he's super accurate throwing the ball. So that'll be a little bit different change from Joe, but he's obviously not as big either. So if he gets bumped a little bit, he might go down a little bit easier than Joe did in the pocket. So we'll see, but I expect a big year out of him either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him be the guy and just see him. He just has this thing like Dobbs and Hooker had where he's just like always moving forward. Mm-hmm. He's just really sleek and, makes quick decisions. So, I mean, we haven't seen him in a big time role yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going to be special. I mean, just, you can just kind of tell with a guy. Again, anything could happen, but I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going to be a great player.
Yeah. Do you have any upsets in your mind for this weekend, big or small? Or let's say, what's your biggest upset like that you think will happen?
I mean, I don't know. Just looking at it this week, I don't really see, there's not like a huge. There'll be a game or two that's close into the fourth quarter that shouldn't be like there always is, but I'm not anything that really like sticks out. I mean, if you look at the Notre Dame Texas A&M game, I mean, preseason rankings is already discussed, or kind of you can throw them in the trash, but I mean that's
A&M's favored actually.
A&M's favored, so I mean you could say that. I don't really know. I mean, like I said, first week is just hard. You got to see everybody play for a week or two and see what they've got. Like I said, I mean that Virginia Tech Vandy game is interesting because I think Virginia Tech is definitely the better team, but we'll see how they respond. We'll see what Vandy has this year. I mean they've got the transfer from New Mexico State, Diego Pavia. He's been a really dynamic player. I mean, and they won at Auburn last year. New Mexico State did. So that one's really interesting to me to see how that one goes. I expect Virginia Tech to win, but I think it'll be really close. And then maybe Sunday night, the USC LSU game. I mean, we've heard all about LSU, but their defense is going to have to make a huge improvement from last year for me to start believing that they're going to be any kind of title contender. So that's going to be an interesting to watch.
Yeah, both of them.
And obviously USC.
Heisman caliber quarterbacks too, and going to new guys.
Yeah. Yeah, because USC replacing their quarterback too, and LSU obviously replacing Daniel. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. But as far as like upsets, nothing really just like straight jumps out. I mean, a lot of people want to say that North Dakota State's going to upset Colorado on Thursday night. We'll see. I mean, North Dakota State was not themselves last year. Well, I mean, obviously they were all coming off a crazy run, but
Yeah.
they weren't quite as good last year. And I mean, even though I'm not a big believer in Colorado, I believe they'll probably be a little bit more consistent or better this year. Even if that means maybe 6-6, I just think they'll be better the second year. But we'll see. I just don't think that they'll be able to beat Colorado, but maybe. But nothing really jumps out specifically the first weekend. I'm sure there'll be a couple of results that surprise us, but I can't really pinpoint any right now.
Yeah, I don't. One that comes to mind for me, I don't know if it'll turn out to be an upset, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer and a little bit tougher than a lot of people think. I think the Penn State West Virginia game going to
Oh
West
yeah, yeah.
Virginia. Uh, I've watched Aller. I know my dad's a Penn State fan. I've watched their quarterback last year. I'm just not real big on him. I know he's got a lot of hype and they have a lot of faith in him. I just don't know if he can give them that next step that they need as far as making. I mean, playoff format's obviously different this year, but making that run in the postseason, winning the big games when they matter. But I could see that one getting dicey.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it since like 2016, I think if the playoff was 12 teams since 2016, Penn State would have been in like 7 of the 8 years or
Yeah,
6 of the 8 years, something like
at least.
that. So those people were definitely expecting them to make it. But I mean, Aller's kind of like a reverse of DJU or Joe, is whereas like instead of wanting to air it out, like it
He
seems like
wants
he
to run.
always wants
Yeah,
to tuck and run. Like
yeah,
he's a huge guy and he's a solid runner, but I mean, he's very inaccurate. That's what cost them in
yeah,
that Michigan game last year. They had field position a ton, and they just like could not score in the red zone. And then finally, Michigan just wore them down. So yeah, that's the one I forgot about because West Virginia's got Garrett Green coming back. They got C.J. Donaldson, like a bowling ball running back, and a pretty solid defense. So that'll be sneaky. I mean, I think Penn State's maybe more than a touchdown favorite too. So I mean, that
yeah,
would be one to definitely keep an eye on. I think West Virginia can win that game outright, but we'll see. Well, like I said, not having seen them, just knowing what they've got coming back, I think that'll be a real competitive game.
yeah. Um, I guess since we're talking about it a little bit, what are your thoughts on? I think we talked about it last year with the new college football playoff format expanding to 12 teams.
I mean, I love it just because, I mean, even if one of the top 4 teams ends up winning it still, it just makes it more
Oh yeah,
enjoyable and more, it gives something to play for. I mean, a lot of people advocate for even going back to the BCS or the 4 teams because they say it makes the regular season meaningless. But to me, it makes it even more meaningful because, especially into November, you probably have 20 or 25 teams that are fighting to get in and also fighting to play at home. Like, there is still incentive to win because if you blow a game or you like say you're like, oh, the SC championship doesn't matter, and then you lose and you're like ranked in the top 4, well then you don't get a bye. Or if you're ranked in the top 5 or 6, then you might go on the road the first week of the playoff. So there's still definitely incentive to win. So I don't really get that argument. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like change, and I don't like change, but I don't think this change is going to hurt the game
no,
any more than some of the rules they've changed have. Like if we want to start talking about things they need to change, they need to get rid of this freaking stupid running clock. Like the games don't have to go by faster. If people don't like the games, they don't have to watch.
yeah, exactly.
Like I hate how much faster the games go now. Like I enjoyed the games like being long and like I don't know. There's plenty of stuff to change before we worry about the playoff ruining the game. So I like it and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and like since they made the playoffs with the 4 teams, uh, from what I've gathered, like any year that Alabama hasn't been in it, which isn't many, their fans could give a rat's butt about what bowl game they're playing in. Like at this point, like, and for us Tennessee fans, the year with Hooker, pending injury, obviously, but we dropped the one to Georgia, which played them. We played not our best in the first half, but we played them good in the second half. If we played 2 halves like that, it would have been a heck of a game. And then we dropped the one to South Carolina at the end of the year, but we played that bowl game. Obviously, did well even without Hendon, but that would have given us a chance. Like, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind we were one of the top 4 teams in the country, even though we dropped 2 games. The same thing with like Penn State or Ohio State over the last several years with battling with Michigan and each other, etc. So, um, I mean, people want to see those games. No, I mean, NFL would be so much less interesting if they dropped it to like 4 teams on each side. And NFL's even expanded their playoffs. It used to be 6 on each side. Now they do, what is it, 7 and an
7,
extra
yeah,
wild
7.
card. Yeah. So, um, I mean, it's all about money too. The more teams you have in it, the more fan bases are intrigued, the more viewership, the more games you can have. Um, I'm a big fan of it. I think 12. I always said 12 to 16. I think would be a perfect number because looking back at the year with UCF when they went undefeated, I think they were ranked 12th going into that bowl game against Auburn or somewhere around there. So like that would put them in automatically as undefeated um, at that point on Power Five. So I think it gives those smaller schools that aren't in the Power Five or the big conferences that do well in the year and beat some bigger teams, give them a chance at proving themselves. Whereas the past just a couple years, the 4-team playoffs, those teams never had a chance. Or even when it was just the BCS, when it's the top 2 teams at the end of the year, definitely didn't have a chance. So it makes it definitely a lot more interesting, and I think it'll be better for the game and for viewership.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm all for it. Just imagine like that first weekend that I think there's one game on Friday night and then 3 on Saturday, and it's like just imagine those matchups and like obviously wishful thinking, but like just imagine if Tennessee were like hosting somebody like Oregon or somebody
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in a playoff game. I mean, first off, it would be an unaffordable ticket, and it would just be a crazy scene. Like it would just be, it's going to be awesome. And I think that after, I mean, I don't know how it's going to work, but I just think that after they see a couple of years of those first round games on campus, like I think it's going to ultimately one day end up being like every game on campus until maybe the semifinals or the final, which is how it should be. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, but I still like the bowls too. I like watching the bowls, so I'm for as much football as we can get to watch. I mean, I hate the opt outs and that kind of thing. I get it, but I think this will really. I mean, people won't opt out as much either because
yeah.
they'll have so like everybody, the top 25 basically going into November will have a chance,
Yeah,
and really probably somebody that's like 7-2 going into November and isn't in the top 25, like you'll have a chance. So I just think it's going to make it better. I don't really get the argument that people's like it's going to water down or kill the sport. No, because you're still playing for something. Like unless you're undefeated, there's not a guarantee you're going to get a bye or a home game. So
yeah,
there's no way to sit out players or do stuff like that. This isn't like week 17 or 18 in the NFL. Like you can't just win your division and get the automatic seed. Like you still have to win it out. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be awesome and it's going to extend and make meaningful games all the way into early January. So I can't wait for it.
yeah. And I think even just thinking back to last year, I think like the bottom half of the top 25, all of them had like 3 to 4 losses. So, and then with the new changes in conferences, with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, several other teams joining the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten has like 18 teams in it now, or 18 schools. Um, you know, that's going to be a bloodbath. But the SEC alone, like, is going to be a bloodbath. Every game is going to be tough. With the exception of like, depending on how good Vandy is. But like, you got Georgia, you have Alabama, you have Tennessee, you have Oklahoma. Missouri is going to be really good. Texas is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, like realistically, going into the season, like you could say that the projected top 8 teams, like their fans are going to be disappointed if they don't make the playoff. I mean, you got
Yeah,
obviously Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, Oklahoma, LSU, like all these teams. Realistically, like it's not a stretch to say they could get in. So
yeah,
it's I don't know. I think it makes it more intriguing, and I'm for it. Like, I don't want a full-on NCAA tournament, like 16 versus 1 basketball type deal, but
no,
I'm good with the 12 and letting a group of 5 team in because a lot of years a group of 5 team is good enough to, or the best group of
yeah,
5 team is good enough to play with or beat the 5 seed if they played perfect. So I'm good with how they have it. I don't really mind it at all, and I don't really care if they expand to 16 really because I still
yeah.
think that those teams are competitive enough to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, if you're that top 4 seed, you get the bye, which you know people argue all the time with in different sports. Is that extra week off good or bad for you? Because sometimes the momentum and you have everything going in the right way, and then you take that week off because you get that week off, and then you come out kind of flat and don't play as well. Whereas other teams just played the week before, so they're still rolling. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely an incentive to be a top 4 team still. So I like how they did that. Give them that bye in the first round. But yeah, like you said, the 16 teams would be good too. Then you could do, I mean, you could do it a bunch of ways. You can give the top 8 a first round bye, or you can do it like one plays 16, two plays 15, like NCAA tournament basketball type. I mean, you can do it however, just to, I mean, because at the end of the day, for the most part, the best teams are going to be the best teams, and they should win the games and meet at the final stage. But um, I think the over under for SEC teams to get into the playoffs this year preseason was like 5.5. It's a pretty tricky line if you think about it.
It's going to be under. There ain't no way they're letting that many teams in.
Oh,
The uproar would be freaking insane.
if you just
I
look at
mean,
the
unless there's
schedule
just
for it,
like
because
five teams that are 10-2.
yeah, because if like Texas has 1 to 2 losses, Georgia has 1 to 2 losses, Alabama has 1 to 2 losses, buddy, all three of them are going to get in at 10-2.
Yeah, and then it's going to be whoever's next best,
Yeah,
like Slim Pickens SEC, because those teams are getting in.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think it also is really interesting because, like, if you look at it, the 1 through 4, like the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are guaranteed to the SEC, Big 12, Big
yeah,
10, and ACC champs. So then theoretically, the second best team in the country could be the 5 seed. So
yeah.
they like could all honestly almost get not an easier, but an easier path
Mm-hmm.
to the semis because like they're going to play the Group of 5 team because unless the Group of 5 team is just undefeated and unbelievable, the Group of 5 team is going to be the 12. So then you play the 12 seed at home, which you would say of all the matchups would probably be the easiest again, and then you win and you get the 4 seed. So you
Yeah.
get basically the lowest rated. So you could theoretically have Georgia could be 13-0 and win the SEC and play Texas, not this year obviously, but in another year, 12-0 in the SEC championship game, and they lose, and then Texas is the 5 seed.
Yeah.
And so they beat the Group of 5, and then they go on the road to like I don't know Utah, or not on the road, but they play Utah in the Fiesta Bowl, and Utah could be like 8-4 because they won their league, and they could be the higher seed than Texas, who's going to be like 13-1. So I don't think just having those top 4 seeds is some crazy advantage. So like I said, to me, that just completely disproves the argument that the regular season doesn't matter because there's still incentive to get these buys and to be positioned. So yeah, it's just going to make some really awesome matchups, and then you're going to have a higher seed lose to somebody that played that first week, like you said, and is going to question the bye and like going to try and figure out a way to shorten the bye and this kind of stuff. So it's just going to create a lot of storylines, and it's going to create intrigue. So I'm looking forward to it. I definitely don't want to wish away the season because the season is special and great, but like the playoff is going to add an element to it, I think.
Yeah, and adding that incentive as far as winning, the conference championship to getting those top 4 seeds, that finally like ties back into what they originally wanted to do with the 4 teams, with the 14 playoff, is you have to be a conference champion. Which I mean, they squashed that. I think it was with Ohio State, Penn State year. I think maybe
2016.
So, so that'll be back into play. I mean, there's no way around it really. So that'll be good to have too.
Yeah.
But yeah. So looking at the SEC, what is you want to go like one by one prediction here, or we can even do top?
We can go at the same time to see where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, first, I mean, as much as it just sickens me, I mean, it's just hard not to pick Georgia number 1.
Yeah, it is. And looking at their schedule too,
I mean, it's tougher than it's been, but I mean, now they play Clemson. Clemson's on the decline. It might be slow, but I think they're on the way down. I mean, I don't think they're going to win another national championship or be as solid as they were with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and all the receivers they had. So, I mean, their schedule is more difficult on paper, but to me, it just even at 10-2, they're in the playoff, and they're probably going to be in the SEC championship game, and they're probably going to win the SEC on a neutral field. So, I got Georgia number 1.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just the history over the last 3 years, and not much has changed there. I can't not pick them as much as it pains me to.
Yeah, so I'd say that's one of my SEC championship game participants. It gets really hard for number 2, I think, because, I mean, there's a lot of hype for Texas, but they've never been through the SEC. And while their schedule is kind of favorable for the first year, you just got to see how they handle it. I mean, just because they've played a tough, difficult schedule. They've been the number 1, team in the Big 12 the last few years and had the target on their back. But it's just different in this league. So I think they're going to be good, but I don't know. Ole Miss, they're really good. They got a lot of transfers. How do they mesh? I mean, they've been really good the last couple of years. Can they get over the top and make it to the SEC championship game for the first time? There's a lot of places to put, or a lot of teams to put there. Obviously that Alabama factor. I think there's a lot of teams fighting for second. But again, turn my head and cough and just stomach it. Probably Alabama's number 2 because,
Yeah.
While I don't think they're going to sustain the success with Saban with DeBoer, I do think DeBoer is a good coach, and it's going to be, an adjustment for the teams to see how they're going to play now. I think they'll probably go faster on offense like they did with Penix at Washington, they still got a lot of talent and a lot of athletes, and I just think that they're going to carry that over at least for a couple seasons. So, as vanilla and as predictable as possible. I mean, it'll probably be Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship game if I had to. If you put a gun in my head and make me pick it, that's who I would say is 1 and 2.
Yeah, yeah, I can honestly go either way with the second one, because whoever's not 2, I think is 3 between Texas and Alabama. It's just Alabama has changed so much since last year with the new coach, new players. Whereas Texas, bringing back Ewers and a lot of their stud guys are going to be back. They're going to recruit just as well. But the scheduling thing comes into play too. So, I mean, like you said, if I had to pick, I'd probably say Alabama 2 because I think it's a safer pick, and then probably Texas at 3. That'd be my
Okay.
3.
I'll give you 3 through 8, and then you can do what you want after that, because I just feel like you just put all these teams in a bag. Who stays the healthiest? Who gets a couple of fortunate breaks, a couple of fortunate bounces? I mean, I would probably, even though new first year, I just think Texas, their schedule's favorable and they are really talented. I would probably put them at 3. I'd probably put Ole Miss at 4. I'd probably put, no bias. I think Tennessee at 5, and that might be 9 and 3 at 5, but that would be a solid season, and you'd be right there on the cusp of the playoff if you're 9 and 3 with Tennessee's schedule, depending on who you lose to, who you beat. I think Missouri 6. I think they're going to be good, but I think that they're just,
But their schedule is a cupcake schedule. Have you seen their dang schedule?
Yeah, I have, but Drinkwitz at some point is liable to put his foot in his mouth, walk his team into it, and they'll make a mistake or choke. I mean, it's still Missouri, all right? Let's not get it twisted.
By far the easiest schedule in the conference.
Oh, they by far, but Oklahoma at home, they might choke. I mean, at Texas A&M, they might choke. So, just, like I said, I could see any of these teams from 3 to 7 going 3 to 7 because I think it's going to be literally a game between them. So, and Tennessee and Missouri don't play, so they might have the same record, but Tennessee might be higher in the rankings the last week of the season. So, I would say Missouri 6, and then I would probably put, I don't know, Oklahoma or Texas at 7. So I'll just say Oklahoma because I think at this point, like I said, there might be a game or two in between 3rd and 10th. So I would say Texas 3, Ole Miss 4, Tennessee 5, Missouri 6, Oklahoma 7.
Pretty solid. Who's 8?
Probably LSU.
LSU, yeah. Yeah, so I have Georgia, Alabama, Texas. I'm gonna say us at 4. It's kind of a toss up for me with Ole Miss, kind of 3 or 4 and 5 right there. I like us at 4, Ole Miss at 5, then Missouri at 6, and then probably. I think I like LSU at 7, and then Oklahoma at 8. But like you said,
Yeah,
a lot of toss-ups there. I think I think Georgia is the only clear-cut one that I believe is going to finish where I think I picked them. 2 through 8, I think you could flip 2 and 3, you could flip 4 and 5, you could flip 6 through 8 for me.
Yeah, like I said, I think from 2 to 8 it'll probably be a maximum of 2 games difference, and like probably from 3 or 4 to 8 that'll be like 1 game apiece or who beat who head to head. So it's gonna be so competitive. I mean, I think after that it kind of is like I would probably have Florida at 9. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they're going to be better than people are predicting. Probably would have Kentucky at 10.
Yeah,
and Kentucky at 10 might be 7 and 5. I mean, they might have a solid season. It's just that's how deep the SEC is. And then 11 through 14, I mean, it's hard because I think well, they're 16 now, obviously. 11 through 16, you got Mississippi State with the first-year head coach, and they lost a lot. South Carolina looks like Beamer's going to have to do something big time to keep his job. Arkansas, same. I mean, Arkansas might have an interim coach by the time Tennessee comes in October, depending on how they start.
yeah.
Vanderbilt, same. I mean, it's just
Arkansas, Florida, and South Carolina pretty much like all on the hot seat.
Yeah, Auburn. You got to squeeze Auburn in there somewhere. There's a lot of people saying that they think Auburn's going to be much improved, and that could be the case. I mean, so I think that it really gets hard there in the last 6, 11 through 16. So I would put Vandy at 16.
Oh, yeah.
for their history. Although I really don't like Lee. I mean, I don't mind Lee. Like for Vandy hatred, I don't really mind Lee. I think he's a pretty solid guy. But I really thought they'd be better last year, and they were worse. So I'd put Vandy at 16. I'd probably put Arkansas at 15. Oh, wait, Mississippi State at 14.
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably Auburn at 11. I mean, I don't know. I think from 11 to 16 is the same
Yeah.
thing. I mean, they might all be 3-5. They might all be 2-6. It just depends.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna dabble into it. It's too much.
Biggest thing is I think 1 and 2. I think the difference between 1 and 8 could literally be one game. I think it's going to be that competitive.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make for hopefully for 2026 they'll adopt the 9-game schedule, and then we'll get to see 9 conference games a year.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's so competitive, and the teams are all going to be so equal, especially with this NIL and stuff, that we need to see these matchups more. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think that it's going to be as competitive as we've ever seen. Like I think Georgia is going to be the best team, and I think they're loaded, but they could go 10-2 in the regular season. I mean, they have to play at Texas, they have to play at Ole Miss, they have to play at Bama. I mean, they do have to play us at home. I mean, we haven't performed well against them. That's the one team that's just giving us a hard time with Heupel. But you never know with Nico clicking. I mean, their schedule is much more difficult than it has been. So they could lose a couple in the regular season and still win it all. So it's going to be super competitive.
Yeah, like you said, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, it's going to be crazy with, Texas and Oklahoma joining in all these crazy games. I mean, because, we've done the home and home with Oklahoma a couple times over the years, and just with Texas and Alabama doing it now, that that's going to be regular scheduling things. So it's going to be better for the conference. It's going to be better for us as fans. It's going to be better for the players, the teams. You're going to know a lot sooner who's for real and who's not, just with the tough schedules. I mean, playing tough teams almost every week. Like you said, when they move to a 9-game, 9 out of 12 games are going to be tough and no more cupcake ones. So, because even like that, the non-conference ones, like we play NC State, they're going to be good. But if we're playing NC State or even Florida, I think Florida is going to be a tougher game just because it's conference. And but we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to this year and upcoming years as far as college football goes. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the sooner we can get to 9 games, the better. I mean, we need to play 9 conference games. We need to play at least one other non-conference game against the Power 5 team, and then play 2 trash teams. Like, for this price of season tickets alone, for the TV stuff, I think it's going to happen. So hopefully that's the track we get on here soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Going to kick it off this weekend. But yeah, we will be. You have anything else before we close it out?
Not really. I guess the one big thing is I just think that the only game we should talk about probably is that Florida Miami game, just a little, just because of who is going to be sitting on the Bunsen burner after the first game. Well, first off, they're going to be in the swamp, literally and figuratively. It's going to be so hot. But those two teams are, if anybody, are so used to it. But 3:30, the first SEC on the ABC broadcast with the new partnership for TV. And it is going to be definitely one to tune into. I mean, the Tennessee UTC game should be wrapped up pretty soon after this starts. So I'm going to be locked into this one just to see, Florida. I mean, is Graham Mertz going to be able to perform as well as he did last year despite their record? How soon into a little bit of adversity will they throw in their freshman quarterback Lagway? Because if it looks like the ship's going down or if they're struggling at all, I mean, Napier could throw him in as like a lifeline and him play well and say, hey, this is the future right here. You got to stick with me. And then with Miami, I mean, they obviously have a really stacked roster this year. They really underperformed last year, and they've got a lot of transfers in this year. They got Cam Ward at quarterback. So that's going to be the most intriguing game to me week 1 just because of what's on the line for both teams. Obviously, a little unrealistic as third-year coaches to it be a must-win, especially in week 1. But, I mean, their fan bases are certainly taking it as that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is anymore. There's no time to build or rebuild even within college football. Like everybody is so eager to win now, which that might change now with the playoffs expanding and everybody having a little bit bigger chance of having a shot at it. But if there's not success within those 3 years, it's It's gonna be a tough fight.
Yeah, you're in trouble or you're gone.
Yeah. So I think we'll
So
see it more and more common.
yeah, so I really have no idea how it's going to go. I mean, like I said, again, first week hard to predict, but I think that Florida will probably win. If I'm being honest, I think that they will win at home. I think it'll be tough. We'll see how Cam Ward does. Obviously, getting thrown in, he tried to declare for the draft and then didn't like the grade he got, so he comes back and switches from FSU to Miami. So he's a great athlete, but again, this will be a little different pressure, a little different environment than what he was used to at Washington State. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs, see what Florida looks like. We know they've always got athletes. They've got some really solid receivers coming back for their second year, and then they've got solid skill players. So I just think Florida will win at home. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think both teams will probably play pretty tense, given that it's week one, given what's on the line. But if I had to pick, I'd say Florida probably wins a close one to start the year.
Yeah, I'm opposite. I think Miami's actually going to win, but I will say I think whoever scores a touchdown first is going to win the game. Just a weird, superstitious feeling that I think whoever scores a touchdown first, I think we could see some early field goals or we could see some early touchdowns. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to. If there was a bet on the line that I could do, I would say whoever scores the first touchdown is going to win. But I like Miami. Just with the.
I mean, I'm good with Miami. I'm good with Miami winning. I just feel like Florida's got at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess we'll see. So we'll only have one pick on the line for the first week. So we'll see who was right.
Yeah.
Probably you, but who knows? But no, that's all I got for week one.
Just for the fact that Florida's losing.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I mean, but that's all I got for week one. I think I'm just ready to get it kicked off and should have more to talk about after this first long weekend of games.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about the games from this past weekend next week, and then we'll look at talk a little bit about next week's games, and NFL even starts next week. So we'll have football. How many days a week?
There's not a weekend without football now until February. So
Thursday nights, those occasional Friday games, the MAC games. So best time of the year, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It kicks off, and we don't have another weekend without football until February. So perfect.
Love it. All righty.
Sure.
Well, I believe that is all we have. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok. I think we post on Instagram as well. But you can find our full episodes on Spotify. Where do we put our full episodes? I know it's on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah, Spotify and YouTube is where we've been putting.
Spotify and YouTube. Okay, so Spotify, YouTube. Check us out. Give us a like, follow, subscribe. See you next week.